Ready to explore the extraordinary world of tech? Welcome to the XTech podcast, where we connect you with the sharpest minds and leading voices in the global tech community. Join us as we cut through the complexity to give you a clear picture of the ideas, innovations, and insight that are shaping our future.
Hello and welcome to XTech Podcast by Fox Agency. I'm your host, Debbie Forster MBE. I'm a tech portfolio consultant and an advocate and campaigner for diversity, inclusion, and innovation in the tech industry. I'm delighted to be working with Fox Agency as the host for the XTech podcast and as a curator for the XTech community. Now today, I'm really excited to be joined by Robert Brown. He's the Global Head of Automotive at the BSI Group. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks, Debbie. Nice to meet you.
Lovely. Okay, so Robert, before we dive into what could be alphabet soup, lots of letters I needed to learn to get ready for today, but you'll be gentle with me on the letters. But I love to get to know people as humans, and I think the audience does too. Robert, how did you get into tech? Was this something you always knew was going to happen?
The straightforward answer to that would probably be no. So I'm of that sort of age range that when I got into manufacturing, tech was sort of way off. So, if I go back to my first car, I thought it would have been about 1982, was a Austin Mini, not even a Rover Mini like they are today, an Austin Mini. And I spent lots of time improving the car. If it broke down, you'd lift the bonnet or the hood.
Oh, yeah, the old days when you could reach in and there were parts that you could...
Absolutely. Change the spark plugs, adjust the carburetor, all that sort of good stuff. So that was like 80s, 90s sort of time. And then...
So what took you into automotive then, into that job?
Yeah, a bit of a weird way. I think if someone said, did you plan to get to where you are today? I would say no, but obviously you make decisions in life and you left or right. So that's where you end up. Yeah, so my first full-time job was in a spring manufacturers in Redditch in the UK. Lots of, you think about springs, where the springs go, we think, an ICE, internal combustion engine, well, valve springs in the engine for a start. And probably about 70% of our business was for Ford Motor Company. Yeah, Ford. So in those years in the UK, Ford really, really big in the UK. And so I was there for a couple of years and got involved with a lot of systems at that time. Quality was just taking a grip, and Ford had this quality award called Ford Q1, which had lots of requirements on the supplier, what they should do, what tools and techniques they should use, like the one to manage variation and look at assessing variation in manufacturing, something called SPC, Statistical Process Control. So there's the first three-letter acronym we're going to use. So I did a lot of work in those systems, and I went to college and I was doing a City and Guilds in quality management, and I was approached by the lecturer afterwards. He said, well, I'm just working with this new company in Redditch and other spring manufacturers. They're after a quality lead. Give this guy a shout. So I rang the guy. He gave me a message that, the chief executive of that organisation, and they offered me a job. But it was a big, huge American-owned corporation. 2 plants in Canada, 2 in Mexico, 13 in North America, 1 in the UK, which was the company I previously worked for. They bought them in the end. 2 in Japan, and it was like 95% of the business was purely automotive, pressings, springs, wire forms, all predominantly for GM and people like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So quality systems evolved, and I evolved with it, and the techniques.
Robert, it was inevitable.
Quality.
Yeah, it was inevitable, wasn't it? If you were interested in sort of making stuff, and then more importantly, making sure the processes and systems made stuff right, resistance was ultimately futile. You were going to end up in tech, and look, you hinted that at the start. When we talk about cars, we all know that tech is transforming it. And some were arguing it's a tipping point. What would you say? Do we still have cars that are industrial manufactured? Was it an internal combustion engine? What would you describe? Where are we now?
Yeah, I think tipping point is probably a good place to start. If you think about, countries and their commitment to net zero and the targets, 2030, 2040, or wherever it is, the internal combustion engine is almost, it's almost prehistoric now, but at some point it will be, because it's going to be replaced by electric vehicles and autonomous and all that sort of stuff. So Yeah, some articles I've read saying we're about there. Some articles that said just gone over the precipice. I've just come back from China in April this year, and if you look at the vehicles on the road there, it's just unbelievable.
And but even if we talk about, so yes, software devised vehicles, and if we talk about electric cars, they are tech with wheels. But even internal combustion, even our good old fashioned put petrol in the tank cars, the software involved in that is still now tremendous. So really, tech is cutting across, and you could argue as an industry, it is a different kind of tech industry. Would you agree, disagree?
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, if you think about, if you just think about the development of, model updates or new models and introductions, they've gone from, almost, 2-3 years in lead time to, months in lead time because of, the whole sort of technology around design and do all the design on the CAD and everything on your computer, and you can run simulations, so you know how all the fit and function of everything works there and how the vehicle performs. It's far away when you've gone from days where it was sort of like dark on the manufacturing facility. You go into a modern manufacturing facility assembling cars, you could eat off the floor, and the technology is just amazing. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
And that must mean it's because it is more tech and all the things that you're saying that can be done more quickly. The disruption must be huge, even in terms of getting into automotive industry, that companies, organizations that could never have thought of suddenly becoming an automotive company can now do that in relatively ease and quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm come from the traditional background of Ford, GM, and Chrysler and BMW and all that sort of Honda, Nissan, Toyota. I've worked with Honda, Nissan, Toyota for a number of years in the supply chain, but yeah, if you just think about, and you can't get away from it, you think about China and how they've got to be classed as the leading country in terms of EV manufacturer. Huawei are now making vehicles. Google are making vehicles. There's an organisation in China called Xiaomi, massive mobile phone manufacturers, and they decided in 2021 that they were going to commit to producing an electric vehicle. And then less than 3 years later, they're in the market producing an EV car that sells very well in China. It's not a global one yet. They'll be a bit behind BYD, which obviously the world's leading one. But to go from nothing to there's the car mass produced in less than 3 years.
And you'd hardly describe normally a mobile phone company as a sector that's adjacent to making cars, and to do that pivot in 4 years. I mean, I guess that's something for anyone on the podcast to think about is, if we're in agreement that digital is devouring the world and everything is becoming digital, then really the pivoting into other sectors, we should maybe sometimes take a step back and think boldly on where we can go, what we can do. Big risk, but potentially either if you're facing extinction in your own current sector, looking into something else, or just big advantage of being able to expand your reach in that sense. And maybe we have people in the call that are thinking, and where next do we go with our services, our skills, our products, thinking about industries that we wouldn't normally, because tech is that connector, opens the door on every single sector in that sense.
Oh, absolutely. If you think about the change in the automotive supply chain, you've gone from predominantly, hand manufacturing by hand and by machine. If you go back a number of years, assembly of vehicles, but the whole way the supply chain has changed now. And you talk about traditional supply chain, manufacturers. Now you need to think about, IT providers, software providers, components that have built-in tech in them, wiring harnesses and, sat-nav that all goes in the car, all those sort of technologies that years ago, the only technology you probably have in a car other than the speedometer would be a radio. And then the radio went to a radio cassette, and then it went to a radio with, CD, and now you just plug in Apple Play and off you go.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I remember when the car, oh my goodness, look, we can play our CDs in the car. That was edgy. So that's got to have tremendous impact on the workforce as well.
Yeah, I mean, the upskilling that's required. Obviously, you're going to go from still requiring people to be able to do the manufacturing side, which is obviously now vastly reduced in terms of numbers because technology is coming. Machines can now do, go back a number of years ago, you'd have people welding the car. And now, obviously, never heard of. Now you've got completely autonomous, welding tech that's on the assembly line, comes in, sits in the welding bay, and the welding's automatically done, and it moves on to the next stage. Yeah, so there's still that level of skill that's there. But, going from needing to have a welding qualification, for example, now you need to have the software qualification to be able to develop and run and maintain, the software programming and equipment that's now been used to put the vehicle together.
Now, when we think about this digitization, this making the automotive industry part of tech, it links a lot into what you do at BSI. Can you walk me through what the BSI does and what your role within the BSI is?
Yeah. Thanks for giving that lead in, really. Yeah, so BSI is British Standards Institution. When I joined, bizarrely, I thought it was British Standard Institute, but I was quite quickly corrected to institution. So been around since 1901. I think two interesting sides to it is that we're the UK national standards body. So that's one side. So we develop British standards in the UK. BSI is a member and a founding member of ISO. If you think about, international standards, people might think about 9001 in terms of quality management, or 27,001 in terms of, information security. So, a lot of the work that's done by part of British Standards as our organisation is what we used to call, or it's now called, knowledge solutions. So it's our responsibility on behalf of the UK, and obviously not just the UK automotive, because there's so many international organisations involved in automotive that are based in the UK, to convene the automotive industry together to help support the development of international British standards, which can become an international standard on all the things that are ultimately potentially risk to the sort of success of the automotive sector. And that then leads into, things like AI, for example, and cybersecurity and all those things that we're having to develop. It's come from an organisation needing to have a certificate that checks the effectiveness of the quality management system. And now the organisation needs to think about the management system ecosystem. So you need quality, you need environmental, you need health and safety, you need cyber. It's massive in the supply chain.
And I think, and that must have been huge and just a exponentially growing area, because whereas I'd imagine a lot of the standards used to be around health and safety and quality, but now nobody comes on this show and says, no, we don't worry about cyber. That's not a problem for us. We're going to be, but this is big for the automotive industry when we think about cyber threat and cybersecurity, isn't it?
It's huge. I think it's probably the biggest threat. And personally speaking, I don't think a day goes by where you don't look at the news, whether it's on a TV or a pad or something. I was going to say, read a newspaper. You don't tend to read a newspaper these days, where there's some sort of report of some big organisation not being able to, trade, take orders online, manufacture cars. There's one currently in the UK. There's a cyber issue. One of the manufacturers in the UK, I don't think they've manufactured a car in 2 days, all through cyber. These attacks are huge.
And that supply chain. So we'll talk about what it means for, individual cars. But I think, like everyone, we need to really, really understand that cyber threat is not, and understanding the cybersecurity of our supply chain is not merely them getting just into our information or data, but, manufacturing supply lines, supply chains, the whole piece can be ground to a halt. And given that we have a global marketplace now, that means we can't just be looking at what's happening here in the UK. Any company needs to be looking right through every aspect of their business to understand what's happening in that cybersecurity, mustn't it?
Absolutely. I think there's obviously two parts to it. I think when I first came into industry, I was in the days of total quality management and that big push about, quality is everyone's responsibility. It's not the sort of people that wear, white shirts and test the products. Manufacturing makes the parts at the end of the day. And now we see a lot of initiatives around cyber and trying to ensure, we do a fantastic job in BSI about the individual's responsibility in terms of understanding the impact of cybersecurity and how they can be affected and what we can do to lower that risk. But then, you're absolutely right. We're talking about a global supply chain. Look what happened when we had, unfortunately, that COVID epidemic and how that sort of stopped us manufacturing vehicles across the world, but parts could just not be moved and transported. And it's not too far to stretch to say, if you had a big cybersecurity attack on a prime tier one provider to the OEM that could put them out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days or whatever, that could stop parts being shipped, stop parts being delivered, stop cars being manufactured. Been examples when that has happened. It seems to be on the rise, doesn't it? You hear more about it. And I think that's good from a point of view of raising people's awareness more. But then it questions whether, as organisations, we're making the right judgment call about how we need to, look at cyber and control it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And I think we're preaching to the converted on this podcast because tech people are trying to do it. It's trying to get all aspects of the organization because there is supply chain, but I'm sure within the automotive industry, there's the cyber threat has information in terms of getting into a car, what's going on in the car. Talk me through some of those and how you're working with the industry to combat that threat, to raise awareness and to raise the security in there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, I think there's an annual event that goes on in the US where it's like how quickly can you get into an EV, an automotive vehicle, and I think the last one that happened last year, a couple of years ago, they got in via the sensor on the tyre pressure. So they got into the car via the sensor on the tyre pressure valve. But yeah, huge. I mean, recently, I think it was around about 2021, the UNECE organisation, the United Nations, they brought out some requirements then aimed at the vehicle manufacturers, regulations around cybersecurity, and the other one, which I need to take into consideration, about over-the-air updates. So the one about cyber was this, technically another almost 3-letter acronym, Regulation 155, and the other one's Regulation...
Oh, yeah, 155. I mean, I liked 154, but 155 is really the one that kept me up reading that night.
Where did that number even come from? Who knows? And that was really adding a requirement to the vehicle manufacturers to demonstrate that they had an effective cybersecurity management system. And part of their, conformity of production for the vehicles has now started. That's a requirement that's been rolled out. And now the OEMs are seeing the value of that approach. And that approach, like a lot of things within the automotive sector and other sectors, it's like, well, cyber, we need to do something on that. It's nice to have. Oh, yeah, but it's going to cost us 30 grand. They're now saying to the supply chain, right, okay, we know it's effective. And we're going to mandate it. So supply chain now has no option. You need to adopt what's the latest best practice in terms of cybersecurity management to address those issues.
It's huge. I mean, my mind is reeling. I'm thinking about driving my car before recording this today, and as I parked the car, it was saying it needed to do a software update. Yeah, of course. If they've not really got their cyber up to speed, that could be hacked. My car, everybody's car suddenly doesn't work. They could be through my tire sensor getting through. I think that's not to just give me a sleepless night, which it may do about my car, but it is about, I think any of us in any sector, in any industry, as tech leaders, have to get our company to think more widely in that way. As everything becomes digital, as everything is becoming more effective, hyper-powered by tech, yes, we've got to convince our people to do that. But in the same way, we've got to get them to really think through and what happens if it goes wrong. And if we're talking about cyber, you and I know, Robert, don't we? It's not asking yourself, what do I do if it goes wrong? It's what do I do when it goes wrong? Because as you were saying, this is becoming more of a daily reality, those cyber incursions. And it is, how are we preventing it? And then what are the plans if they get through? I think is really important. And I think as tech leaders, we have that challenge to take everybody, not just our devs, not just our engineering departments, through that to really understand what that means.
Yeah, like we said before, it's everyone's responsibility. And I think the thing with tech, in a way, it's sort of like almost under the surface. Updates occur. Sometimes you don't even have to press a button. So it's not. It's almost as though you don't get into your vehicle and something is physically different in the vehicle. You get into the vehicle and it's got more options, perhaps. You can go on your app for a certain car manufacturer and say, okay, I now want to trigger the fact it's now cold, it's the winter. I want to, over the next 6 months, I want to have the heated seat option, and you pay for 6 months of heated seat option, and then you switch it off, or you pick up another option for the summer. It's like I say, it's almost like a mobile phone. I mean, a mobile phone, realistically, I know it's a mobile phone by name, but it's not really a mobile phone, is it? It's like it's a computer. You carry it around everywhere. The last thing is a phone, to be honest. Yeah, so I think, you see things change and probably not even notice they change. But yeah, it's everyone. It's the industry's responsibility, and individually it's our responsibility to take the necessary steps to educate people. And that's the first point. We all need to be educated about, what could go on, can go wrong, and what would the impact go wrong. There's a technique that's used in the automotive industry called failure mode effects analysis, FMEA, and that talks about, if something goes wrong, not what would be the impact, not and one of them can't be, we do this, it's never going to go wrong. Well, sooner or later something will go wrong, or something, as the tech develops, these people that do hacking, they sort of get ahead of the game, don't they? It's like when people used to break into cars, we can do this way, and then, we'll have central locking. You take the key away and put it in your pocket, and then they've got scanners to take the code, and there you go. So there's that horrendous approach of having to try and protect it from, people that, don't really live in the real world and go to work properly. Yeah.
But I think it's something for all of us to think, because it could be very easy, if we are in tech within our companies, that we are thinking about our software, we're thinking about our processes, and when we think about our hardware, we are thinking about our servers. We're not thinking about the tech that underpins, the software that underpins the really bare infrastructure of what our organization may do. And that is something to wake up and think about, both in the good, how could you maximize that? But what are you going to do? Because if the software on something that all your forklifts runs on goes down, they're going to ask you, because you're tech, aren't you? And how are we going to fix it? So it's interesting to start thinking more broadly, more deeply in areas that we might not have been able to do that. Okay. So Robert, I feel like we've already gone to the horizon and back, but for you, we've been talking a lot about what is the day-to-day reality and what's coming up straight away. What's on the horizon for you? I love hearing from the audience. What is fascinating you, grabbing your attention on the horizon?
Yeah, I think the one thing is the speed, isn't it? The speed of how software is being developed, systems lead times have been reduced, and just the evolution of the vehicle. It's just amazing. When I was in China, the tech is just like huge pads in the car, and probably they'll get to the first completely autonomous car driving itself on the road. I think that's going to continue, and that's exciting. And you're almost like, we're not really sure what's next, although I'm sure listeners to this podcast or in the tech industry, they know what's just around the corner.
Well, but for you, okay, everybody likes to talk about on the show. This used to be much more wide-ranging. I think a lot of times on this question, it is, what about AI is fascinating you on the horizon?
Yeah, AI has got to be the number one thing around the corner, which is becoming, almost talked about even more than cyber threats. I think the approach for AI and the controls required around AI, obviously similar to cyber. And I don't know whether people on the podcast will know, but there's ISO brought out an international standard last year, 42001, all about IT management. But you think about application of AI on the vehicle. Ultimately, you can open the door. Maybe you just walk up to the car and the car automatically opens for you, and you get in. And that AI in that vehicle can completely understand what type of music do you want to listen to, what temperature you want the car at, what your seat position's like, how you sort of drive in terms of accelerating away from the lights, how you corner, whole driving style. It can adjust automatically adjust the suspension for the ride and all those sort of things. But
I'm already feeling judged by my car, by the way. I'm sensing it will be really disappointed in me.
Well, I've got my son, he's 20 years old. He passed his driving test a couple of years ago, and he has a black box which helps reduce his insurance based on his driving style. So you can have it the first year in the UK and the second year. And that black box monitors him in terms of acceleration, cornering, and speed compared to the speed on the road. And you can reduce your insurance by, I think in his first year, he could reduce it by 60% based on his driving style.
Yeah,
and it's great.
Our kids have the same.
It's brilliant. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But you think about that AI controlled vehicle is tracking all that information. I think two things futuristically, your insurance company could be receiving that data, obviously in a controlled manner because it's private information, and that could also reduce your annual insurance policy, or it may well, depending on driving style, it may well significantly increase it as well. But then you think about, the move is all towards getting to a level 5 autonomous vehicle, and the AI is certainly going to play a major role in that because it's going to have that vehicle completely connected to everything. We talk about V2X. So it's going to control your speed, and cars ahead of you if there's an issue, and need to slow down. All the vehicles will slow down. All the vehicles will move forward. The safety impact is going to be huge. Hopefully, it'll impact on traffic in terms of slowing everything down. It'll just be completely controlled. So AI undoubtedly is the future. Controlling the vehicle, linking it to all of the infrastructure that's required. It's very exciting.
While we're trying to get there, it's why I want you guys at BSI to make sure that you're getting that security, getting it cyber resilient, making sure there's standards in place against hallucinations, etc. Because that's not what I want when I'm barreling down the motorway.
No, I can assure you, there's management systems that are developed and out there and being adopted and mandated in the supply chain to protect. And there's obviously ongoing developments as we move forward with the sector. Very exciting time. I'm not sure I'm going to get away from changing gear and holding the steering wheel to just sitting there and putting the postcode in and let the car do the rest. That's scary.
I guess it's in the same way. For a lot of us of a certain age, it's a little sad sometimes we can't lift the bonnet and be able to do something, even if it's sort of pointless. Maybe we're going to think back longingly at stage. Do you remember when you could get in the car and go a little faster or do those sorts of things? I mean, it might, for some of us, take a little bit of fun out. But
wind the window down. Yeah.
Well, my partner doesn't let me do it without moaning. I wonder if the AI will. And then last but not least, Robert, I'm a nosy little so-and-so, and I love to know what people are reading or watching or listening that they find valuable. What, when you're not having to be Robert, Global Head of Automotive, BSI Group, what do you find that's useful?
Yeah, from a industry point of view, I'm in a privileged position, obviously, because where BSI sits as a national standards body and where we sit within the auto sector and the convening of automotive organisations to help develop new standards and the way it's discussed and shared and developed. Yeah, there's probably 2 or 3 organisations I sign up to their newsletters to keep me up to date, and I think the ones that I typically have, and it's almost like on a daily basis, there's the Auto World. They have a SDV newsletter which comes out I think 2 or 3 times a week. Then there's Auto.
And my audience can now feel very proud. They know that an SDV is a software-derived vehicle. Drop that into your next dinner party or down the pub. No, that's good. No, we're there, Robert. We know that now.
Brilliant.
Anyone else that does what's an SDV, we get to look really smug and go, come on, keep up.
Well, there's another one for the audience and for you if you've not come across it, NEV.
NEV. And what's that stand for?
When I was in China, they talked a lot about NEVs. And I was like, I had to Google it because I wasn't sure what it was. A new energy vehicle. So not just necessarily EVs or plug-in hybrids, but also, what's coming in terms of hydrogen maybe or other approaches. So very much the thing that's being talked about at the moment, as well as SDVs, is NEVs, new energy vehicles, very popular terminology.
All right, people, you heard it here. There's your latest acronym to drop in conversation and look like you're ahead of that curve. Listen, Robert, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of XTech.
No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. We really, really enjoyed it.
And thank you to all of you for joining us on this episode of XTech. If you'd like to appear as a guest on the show, don't waste a minute. Email us now at xtech@fox.agency. I'd like to thank our whole team of tech experts at Fox Agency for making this podcast possible. I'm Debbie Forster, and you've been listening to XTech.
Keep exploring the world of tech. Subscribe to our podcast and never miss an episode. To discover more opportunities for global B2B tech brands, visit fox.agency today.